Hello and welcome into a Java tutorial. Today we're going to learn about functions. Functions are a way to reuse code so that you don't have to type it out every time. So if I want to print out hello and a name, I would have to do plus the name, which could be names1. This would take the second element of the names array and would print hello plus names I, which is Mary. If we run this, we're going to see hello Mary. But if we don't want to do this every time, we're going to have to declare a function. And that's done by typing out the return type. For now, it's going to be void plus the function name, which is going to be print name. Then two parentheses and two curly brackets. Enter to create a new line, and we have the function. But it's not currently doing anything. If we call it, instead of this system.out, we call print name, you see we can't actually call this method yet because it's not static. And that means that the class would have to be instanced first, which I'm going to show you what that means later. So for now, we're going to have to use static here for it to accept the function. But if we run this, it does nothing, basically. It doesn't display anything. For that, we would have to add a parameter in the function, which would be the type of the variable we want to pass, which would be string, and name, the name of the actual variable we're going to pass in. And this doesn't have to be the same as this, which we're going to pass in, which is going to be names and whichever element we want. We could do Peter this time. And then it still does nothing until we actually do something in here. So we could do system.out.print line name or hello plus name. And that's gonna print out hello Peter, as we can see. You can also, if you're using IntelliJ, type sout and then enter, and then it types out the system.out.println for you. So essentially what we're doing by calling the println function is system is a class somewhere, we don't really care about that. And it just has a function that's called println and it's static, so we don't really have to instantiate the class system to get it and use it. So we can just call it directly. There is another way to do all of this by not having this be void and instead having this be string. And instead of calling it like this, and we would remove this, copy this, paste this here, call the print name function from the print line and pass in the name. And instead of this, we would just return and the string name and semicolon. And this would do the same thing. And of course, this wouldn't do the same thing. You would need to type hello, comma, class name. So you would add this string to this string and you would return the sum. You don't have to put parentheses here. You could put if you want to clarify that it happens first, but you don't have to. Okay, so let's say we want a function that's called print array, or we could do print string array. We could pass in the array, and this would print out the array. So to implement that, we would do static void to not return anything because we're not storing the return value anywhere, and the name, which is print string array. Then we would pass in a string array with the square brackets that indicates an array, and we need to do the names. You could call that something different if you want, or something like R for array. Or you could do names, the same variable, doesn't really matter. Names is simpler, of course, because it's the same variable name. But it doesn't actually access the variable if I remove this. It doesn't work this way. You need to pass through the function, otherwise it doesn't work. The next thing we're going to learn about is the for loop. The for loop is a block of code that runs for a specified amount of time. The syntax is the keyword for, 2 parentheses, and 2 square brackets, one opening, one closing. And inside you need to declare a variable, essentially, which is going to be a int type variable. And usually you declare it as I or J or K, depending on if you have other for loops nested inside of them, which is something more advanced. You equal it to a value, usually 0, and then you need to set a condition. So I is less than 3. You do I plus plus, which means increment I by 1. And the way that conditionals work is that less than, more than, equals to, less or equals to, more or equals to. These are called comparison operators, and they return a Boolean value, which, if you remember, is a true or false value. So if I is less than 3, it's going to return true. If it is equal to 3, it's going to be false, unless it's less than or equal to, unless it's this way, which this is going to run 4 times. So if we have it this way, let's say we want to write the for loop the wrong way intentionally, and then we system.out.println the names array with the square brackets to access an element of the array. And now we're going to input in I, which is gonna increment every time the for loop runs. This is going to give us a runtime exception, which is going to be index out of bounds exceptions, because it ran 4 times actually. It ran 1, 2, 3, 4 times, but because the array doesn't actually have a 4th element, it creates an exception, which if we wrote the for loop correctly, we would not get. This only runs 3 times. You could also replace the 3 by names, which is the array, dot length. Length is a property of the array. And then you would get the same result. And IntelliJ is kind of screaming at us because it's, well, intelligent, coming from its name. And it says that this for loop could be replaced with the enhanced for, which is what we call a for each loop. Instead of declaring a int value and looping over it, now you declare the data type of the actual array, except without the array brackets, because you want to get one value of the array. You do data type of the array plus a name plus a variable name and the actual array you're looping over. And then you can actually directly use that variable name. And this works much the same way. Another problem our code has that is not really a problem is here in the root folder we have the actual main class, which is not a good convention. You would need to... The convention usually is you create a new, you right click the folder you want to create the package in, create new package, and then you type in a name for the package, which if you type com.hello, it's gonna create 2 folders. One is gonna be com and the other is going to be hello. So the convention is com.yourname dot the project name, which is going to be tutorial. And because usually when you create a new project in IntelliJ, it already has a source directory, I'm gonna add that too, but you usually have all this by creating the new project in IntelliJ, which is probably a smarter move. And you can just create these folders and move the main class in there. Click refactor to change the references to create this package line over here. And that's good. These are files generated by IntelliJ. So this has been an introduction to functions in Java. Hope you liked this video, and I'll see you next time.